You've been negotiating your whole life, even if you didn't call it that. From your earliest requests as a child, to the way you ask for time off, to how you navigate relationships, you've always been shaping outcomes through words, posture, and presence. And yet no one ever told you that this very act of asking, listening, adjusting, is a skill. A learnable, repeatable, powerful skill. The art of negotiation is not reserved for boardrooms and billionaires. It is your everyday advantage, if you choose to master it. Where you are right now, yes, you, listening to this, is a moment of potential. Pause and notice. Where are you? What time is it? Comment and let me know. Because right now, at this very moment, you are surrounded by opportunities you've either claimed or walked away from without realizing it. And that ends today. You might think negotiation only applies to job offers, car purchases, big deals. But what about when you say yes when you mean no? What about when you shrink back instead of speaking up? What about when you let someone else define your worth? Every one of those is a negotiation. And if you don't know that, you're losing them. The world isn't waiting for your permission to make decisions. People are deciding what you're worth, what you'll tolerate, and what you'll get. Unless you step in. Unless you speak with intention. Unless you understand the power that's always been yours, hidden in your voice, your preparation, your courage. And here's the truth. Negotiation is not about tricking someone. It's not about overpowering anyone. It's about alignment. It's about knowing what matters to you and helping others see why it should matter to them too. It's about clarity, not cleverness. Direction, not dominance. Think about how many times you've accepted the first offer. Think about when you didn't ask because you feared rejection. Think about when you compromised before the conversation even started. That is what this journey will destroy. That hesitation? Gone? That self-doubt? Replaced with structured courage. That vague, maybe someday I'll speak up, replaced with a blueprint. And we start with one unshakable truth. You are always negotiating. Always. Every question, every silence, every agreement or disagreement. These are deals being made. Some consciously, some unconsciously. The person who sees this wins. The person who ignores it bleeds quietly. Time, money, and confidence. You deserve better, and better begins with awareness. So let's make this practical. You walk into a cafe, the barista gets your order wrong. Do you correct them, or do you stay silent to avoid discomfort? That choice isn't just about coffee, it's practice. It's one more brick in the wall of how you show up. Because small negotiations become habits, and habits become who you are. Let's zoom out. You're offered a job. It's 10% less than what you expected. Do you push back? Do you ask for more? Or do you smile politely and say thank you? That moment, that tiny window, is a turning point. And if you're not ready, it will close. Not because you weren't smart, but because you weren't trained. That's what you're doing here. Training, rewiring, rebuilding the way you think about influence and decision-making. You'll learn not just to speak up, but how to speak up with strategy. You'll learn how to read people, anticipate their reactions, position yourself for trust, and walk away when necessary. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were before fear entered the room. And yes, fear has always been in the room. Fear of being rude, fear of hearing no, fear of being seen as difficult, demanding, or ungrateful. But let's reframe that. What if asking boldly wasn't selfish, but responsible? What if it wasn't about taking, but creating clarity? What if it was the very thing that helped both sides win? You're not here to become aggressive. You're here to become clear, precise, anchored. The loudest person doesn't win. The clearest one does. Tim Castle said it best. You can get what you want every time if you learn the skill. That's not arrogance. It's ownership. And the cost of not owning it? Lost time, lost income, lost peace of mind, lost opportunity. You don't need to suffer for lack of preparation anymore. You just need to learn how to see negotiation for what it really is. A life tool. An every conversation advantage. This is not theory. This is training. And we begin where all power begins. With presence, awareness, ownership. You're not stepping into a new identity. You're stepping back into your authority. You don't need to beg, plead, or pressure. You need to know your worth. Ask for it clearly, and let the silence do the rest. So the next time you're offered less, told to wait, ask to compromise. Pause. Ask yourself, am I negotiating or am I surrendering? Am I shaping this or letting it shape me? The difference is in the decision, and that decision begins now. Because next, you'll discover that all negotiation power begins not with tactics, but with belief. And if that belief isn't there, no tactic will save you. But if it is, you become unstoppable. There is a kind of quiet strength that doesn't need applause. It doesn't demand the spotlight. But when it enters a room, everything shifts. That strength, the kind that anchors you, steadies your voice, holds your ground, comes from one source: belief. Not belief in the system, not belief in luck, belief in yourself. Without self-belief, you will doubt every word before you speak it. You will question every move before you make it. And you will negotiate from a position of insecurity, not authority. But with it, you gain leverage before you ever open your mouth. Let's be clear. You don't have to feel brave to be powerful. You just have to decide that your presence matters, that your voice is worthy, that your needs are not an inconvenience, but a statement of value. The most masterful negotiators don't walk in with puffed chests and booming voices. They walk in with calm certainty. They know what they bring. They know what they want. And they know, without needing validation, that it's okay to ask for it. Think of Rosa Parks. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply sat down because she believed she had the right to be there. That is the foundation of power. That is what you must cultivate. The ability to say, I belong here, without needing anyone else to agree. But belief doesn't arrive by accident. It's built, layer by layer, experience by experience. Every time you ask for something small and hold your ground, that's a brick. Every time you advocate for yourself, even when your voice shakes, that's another. Until one day, your foundation is solid. You don't have to fake confidence. You become it. So how do you build that kind of belief? You begin with the truth. You are not asking for favors. You are offering value. You are not hoping for scraps. You are proposing solutions. And the person on the other side of the table, they need you just as much as you need them. Maybe more, but you forget that. You minimize. You tell yourself, I'll take whatever I can get, not realizing that the moment you do, you invite others to do the same. They will treat you how you treat yourself. That's the first negotiation you must master, the one with your own mind. So, change the language. Stop asking, am I good enough? Start asking, what result am I capable of creating? Shift from self-judgment to value creation. Instead of focusing on who you are, focus on what you deliver. That's what strong negotiators do. Take Oprah Winfrey. She didn't rise to the top by fitting into someone else's mold. She did it by knowing her story mattered, by believing her voice could change rooms. That belief gave her the courage to take control of her contracts, her brand, her empire. She negotiated not from ego, but from identity. You must do the same. Self-belief doesn't mean you'll never feel fear. It means you don't let fear make decisions. When someone offers you less than you're worth, belief says, that's not personal, that's math. When someone questions your request, belief says, let me show you the results. When you're tempted to fold, belief says, hold your line. And here's the key. Belief is built through repetition. Just like muscles. You train it, you stretch it, you challenge it. You don't wait for a crisis to start practicing. You use the small moments, asking for an upgrade, clarifying a boundary, asserting your schedule, to strengthen your identity. You are telling the world who you are with every decision you make. So ask yourself, what story is my silence telling? What message is my hesitation sending? If it's not aligned with your worth, it's time to rewrite the script. Write it with posture. Sit up straighter. Breathe deeper. Look people in the eye. You don't have to be arrogant. You just have to be certain. And when you're not sure, act as if you are. Your body will teach your brain how to catch up. You'll notice something incredible happens when you do this consistently. People begin to treat you differently, not because they've changed, but because you have. And negotiation becomes less about proving yourself and more about presenting yourself. Less about pressure and more about presence. But what about setbacks? What about failure? Won't those shatter your belief? Not if you understand what failure really is. Failure isn't the opposite of belief. It's the teacher of belief. Every missed deal, every hard no, every awkward conversation, they're data, feedback, training reps. If you use them, they make you stronger. If you fear them, they own you. Remember this. You're not asking for charity. You're asking for fairness. And fairness is not a dirty word. It's the foundation of collaboration. So don't dilute your value to make others comfortable. Don't shrink your voice to fit into someone else's script. You're not here to be tolerated. You're here to be respected. And if you ever forget that, go back to the beginning. Go back to the reason you're negotiating in the first place. Whether it's for your family, your team, your mission, or your future, hold that purpose tight. Purpose amplifies belief. Purpose gives courage a reason to stay. So here's the truth. You don't need permission to believe in yourself. You don't need applause or a title or a certain number in your bank account. You just need to choose it. Right here, right now. And from that choice, everything else begins to shift. Because once you believe you deserve to be in the room, the next step is learning how to prepare to own the room. Belief is the fuel, but preparation? That's your armor. And in the next section, you'll build that armor, piece by piece, until no negotiation catches you off guard again. Belief alone can get you in the room, but it won't carry you through the negotiation unless it's reinforced by preparation. This is where amateurs fall and professionals rise. If self-belief is your internal compass, then preparation is your shield. It protects you from doubt, from manipulation, and from being steered off course. Preparation doesn't just help you perform better, It gives you control over the entire rhythm of the conversation. You've probably seen someone walk into a meeting unprepared. They stumble through their words. They respond instead of leading. They get caught off guard by simple questions. And worst of all, they look like they don't believe in what they're offering. Don't be that person. That's not you. Not anymore. Your power in any negotiation begins long before the first word is spoken. It starts the moment you ask yourself, what do I actually want from this? Not what's acceptable. Not what you'll settle for. What do you want? This is called your goal anchor. And if you don't set it, someone else will set theirs and pull you along with it. Without a clear anchor, you're negotiating blind. You'll react instead of lead. You'll drift. You'll concede too early. So write it down. Be specific. I want this number, this term, this outcome. Clarity is your advantage. Vague goals equal vague results. Next, shift the lens. Stop thinking only about what you want. Start thinking about what they want. What pressure are they under? What timeline are they racing? What fears might be influencing their tone? This is what Tim Castle calls strategic empathy. You're not preparing a monologue. You're preparing to solve a puzzle. Their puzzle. Their needs, their worries, their wins. When you understand that, your ask becomes more than a request. It becomes a solution. Think of it like chess. You don't just focus on your own pieces. You learn to anticipate the moves of the other player. That's how you stay 3 steps ahead. And it's exactly how great negotiators think. Now here's where it gets powerful. Leverage. Leverage isn't about threats or power plays. It's about knowing what makes your position strong and how to communicate it with quiet authority. Do you have options? Do you offer something no one else does? Do they need to move quickly? That's leverage, but only if you prepare to recognize it. Even perceived leverage is leverage. If you walk in like you have 10 alternatives, even if you only have 2, people respond differently. Because they sense you won't beg, you won't bend. You're here to collaborate, not chase. And that posture changes everything. Let's talk about your opening. The first few sentences you speak set the emotional tone for the rest of the conversation. If you start with hesitation, apology, or uncertainty, the other side subconsciously picks up on it. So don't wing it. Ever. Script your opening. Practice it out loud. Not to sound robotic, but to remove the stumbles. Stand in front of a mirror. Rehearse with a friend. Say it until your body believes it's real, because by the time you're in the room, it's too late to wonder how to start strong. And don't stop there. Anticipate objections. Write down every possible reason they might push back. Then write your response. Not from defensiveness, from confidence. Objections are not attacks. They are signals. They're telling you where trust is still needed or where clarity is still missing. And when you handle them calmly, directly, without flinching, you gain respect. You shift power. Imagine this. You ask for a higher rate. They say, "That's above our budget." You don't fold. You don't flinch. You say, "I understand. Can we explore where the value might justify the rate?" That calm redirection keeps the door open. That's what preparation gives you. Options instead of panic. Now let's talk about the move no one wants to make. The walkaway. Your batna, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, is your final card. It's what you'll do if this conversation ends without a deal. If you don't know your batna, you'll stay too long in weak deals. You'll make compromises out of fear. But if you've prepared it, truly prepared it, you'll walk when needed, not as a threat, but as a choice. One of the most powerful negotiation moments is when you calmly say, "I understand if this doesn't work. I do have other paths." And you mean it. That confidence only comes from preparation. Remember when Steve Jobs negotiated with record labels for iTunes? He walked in with massive leverage, a hungry digital market, a sleek platform, a loyal Apple fan base. But more importantly, he had a clear, rehearsed plan. He knew what Apple needed, but he also anticipated what record labels feared: piracy. His pitch didn't start with, "Here's what we want." It started with, "Here's how we both win." That's the power of preparation rooted in empathy. Even the environment matters. Don't ignore the logistics. Where will the negotiation take place? Who will be present? How much time do you have? These aren't small details. They shape outcomes. Neutral space levels the field. Tight timelines create pressure. Private rooms allow candor. You're not just preparing words, you're preparing conditions. Lastly, rehearse mentally. Athletes visualize their plays. Actors rehearse scenes in their head. You must do the same. See yourself walking in. Hear your voice calm and clear. Visualize the objection and your poised reply. Feel the handshake at the end. That mental script wires your brain to perform under stress. And when the real moment comes, it feels familiar. Because you've already been there. This is your edge. Preparation isn't a checklist. It's your armor. It's what makes you unshakable when the pressure rises. It's what separates the lucky from the consistent. So the next time you think, "I'll figure it out when I get there," stop. Say instead, "I will know exactly what to do, because I prepared for it." And now, armed with belief and layered with preparation, you're ready to ask. Not softly, not vaguely, but with clarity and authority. Because in the next chapter, you'll learn that the world doesn't reward silence. It rewards those bold enough to speak up for their worth. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you ask for. Clearly, boldly, and without apology. That sentence, simple as it sounds, is the tipping point of every negotiation that turns in your favor. The skill of asking, not timidly, not vaguely, but with conviction, is the defining trait of powerful communicators. Not because they're aggressive, but because they're intentional. Too many people soften their ask to avoid discomfort. They wrap it in disclaimers. They apologize before they even finish the sentence. They whisper their value into the world and hope someone hears it. That ends here. From this point forward, your ask becomes an act of leadership. You speak it not as a favor, but as a declaration. When you frame your ask as something mutually beneficial, something rooted in value, not ego, the room listens differently. Let's begin where most people fail: clarity. If you're not crystal clear on what you want, how can anyone say yes to it? A vague ask is an invisible ask. You say, "Is there any way to maybe adjust this?" They hear uncertainty. You say, "I was hoping for something more." They hear hesitation, but say, "Based on the scope and impact of this work, I'm requesting $75,000 as a base rate and a Q1 delivery schedule." And the energy shifts. Precision wins. If you don't know the number, the deadline, the structure, you're negotiating fog. And fog favors the prepared party, not the one hoping for a lucky outcome. So, get specific. Write it down before you walk in. Speak it aloud until it rolls off your tongue with confidence. Ask yourself, what am I actually requesting? What does a win look like here? Clarity creates alignment. It also invites respect, because it shows you respect your time and theirs. Next, tone. You can make the same ask in two tones and get two very different reactions. If you wrap it in apology, you invite resistance. But if you frame it with authority, you project confidence. And here's the truth. People don't just respond to what you say. They respond to how you feel when you say it. Ditch the weak openings. Stop saying, "Sorry to bring this up," or "Would it be okay if I asked for?" These phrases dilute your power before you even get to the point. Replace them with, "What I'm looking for is," or "Given the results I've created, I'm requesting." This subtle shift changes the dynamic. You're no longer asking for permission. You're presenting value. And let's talk about anchoring, one of the most underrated tools in your arsenal. Anchoring is the act of setting the first number, the first offer, the first condition. Whoever anchors first usually frames the zone in which the rest of the conversation takes place. That doesn't mean throwing out absurd demands. It means asking slightly above your ideal target, high enough to create negotiation space, but close enough to justify with confidence. If you want $90,000, don't open with $85,000 hoping they'll be nice. Open at $100,000. Now you have room to adjust, and you've set the tone. Because here's the reality. The first number said out loud becomes the gravitational pull of the deal. Make it yours. After you make the ask, stop talking. That's the hardest part for most people. Silence is uncomfortable, but it's powerful. When you fill it, you erode your own authority. You start explaining, justifying, even backpedaling. Instead, make your ask, then shut up. Let the silence do its job. Let them think. Let them respond. Let them lean into the space you created with confidence. Because if you can hold that silence without blinking, you show you believe in what you said. You show you're not desperate. You show you're a closer. Now, you might think being bold means being confrontational. It doesn't. You can be bold and collaborative. That's the sweet spot. Frame your ask as a win-win. Not just what you want, but why it makes sense for them. Instead of saying, "I need a higher rate," say, "Given the expanded scope and my consistent results, a higher rate will allow me to maintain this momentum and stay focused on driving outcomes." You've just made your ask feel logical and beneficial. You've made it easy to say yes. And when you do this well, you'll notice something. People don't push back as hard. They respect your preparation. They trust your tone. Because your authority isn't aggression. It's calm, measured clarity. You're not demanding. You're leading. But don't forget the final step, rehearsal. The first time you say your ask should never be in the room. You should have said it to yourself 10 times. You should have said it to a mirror, to a friend. You should have tweaked the phrasing, adjusted your tone, cut the fluff. By the time you're in the real conversation, it should feel like muscle memory. Because under pressure, your brain doesn't perform magic. It performs habits. And if the habit is silence, hesitation, or apology, that's what will come out. But if the habit is clarity, confidence, and calm, that's what takes the lead. Still worried about pushback? Expect it. It's part of the process. If someone resists your ask, don't panic. Ask open-ended questions. What would make this work for you? Or, what would need to shift for you to feel good about this? These questions reframe the moment. They take tension and turn it into conversation. They turn no into not yet. Don't fold at the first sign of resistance. Hold your line. Stay grounded. People respect those who know their value and are willing to stand by it. You can even prepare your response to no. Have alternatives ready. Flexible options. but don't offer them too soon. Let the initial ask breathe. Let the weight of your words land, because the world does not reward vague, fearful requests. It rewards clear, confident articulation of value. It rewards those who know what they want and say it, out loud, without shrinking. You're one of those people now, and next, we'll go even deeper. Not into what you say, but into what you hear. Because the real power in negotiation often lies not in the asking, but in the listening, in the silence, in what's not said, but felt. The person who talks the most in a negotiation is rarely the one in control. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? We're taught to sell, to convince, to fill every second with proof and persuasion. But the truth is, power shifts the moment you stop speaking and start listening, deeply, intentionally, and without rushing to reply. You see, real listening isn't about waiting your turn to talk. It's about tuning in with such precision that the other person doesn't just feel heard, they feel understood. That feeling? It's trust. And trust is the gateway to influence. When you listen well, you uncover things the other party doesn't even realize they're saying. You pick up on their hesitations, their fears, their priorities. You begin to hear what matters most. Not just what they say, but how they say it, and what they don't say at all. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're in a salary negotiation. The employer says, "We're pretty firm on budget." That might sound like a hard stop, but if their voice drops, if their eyes shift, if they tap their fingers nervously, something else is going on. Maybe they have flexibility and benefits. Maybe there's a bonus pool. Maybe they're testing your reaction. If you're only listening to the words, you miss the window. But if you're listening to the person, you lean in. You pause. You say, "I hear that budget is tight. What other levers might be available to make this work for both of us?" And suddenly, the conversation opens again. That's the power of listening. It gives you information you didn't even ask for. It makes the other person feel safe enough to tell you the truth. And when they trust you, they share more. And when they share more, you negotiate better. Tim Castle calls this the most underrated weapon in negotiation. And he's right. Listening doesn't just reveal facts, it reveals emotions. And emotion is what drives decision-making, not logic. So how do you listen like a master negotiator? First, stop planning your next line while they're talking. That's not listening. That's strategizing in disguise. Be fully present. Make eye contact. Nod. Let them finish without interruption. Resist the urge to fix, respond, or rebut. Just be still. Let the silence hang, even if it feels awkward, because that silence, it's doing work. Castle calls this the silent close. After you ask, or after they make a point, say nothing. Just wait. The silence creates space, and most people can't stand it. They'll speak again to fill the gap, and often they'll give you exactly what you need: a new offer, a clearer position, or a revealing hesitation. In one high-stakes business deal, a negotiator asked, "Is there any flexibility on the timeline?" The client said, "Not really," and paused. The negotiator didn't respond. They just held eye contact and waited. 10 seconds passed. 15. Then the client said, "Unless you're thinking about a phased rollout?" That silence unearthed a brand new option, because the negotiator was brave enough to stay still. Next, ask open-ended questions. These are the keys to unlocking the other party's world. Not yes or no, not leading, but curious, respectful. Questions like, "What does success look like for you in this?" What's your biggest concern about moving forward? What's most important to you in this agreement? These questions shift the power dynamic. They move the conversation from me versus you to us together. You become a partner, not a pusher. And that shift changes everything. Listening also requires you to pick up on what's not being said. If someone says, "That should be fine," but their arms cross, their smile fades, and their body leans back, that's not alignment. That's resistance. You can call it gently. "You seem hesitant. Is there something I'm missing?" That sentence alone can unlock honesty. And here's something advanced negotiators do. They mirror. It's simple. When someone says, "I'm just worried about delivery," you repeat the key phrase, "delivery," in a calm, curious tone. This invites them to expand, to explain, to feel heard without being interrogated. Even more powerful is labeling. This means naming the emotion you sense. "It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure," or "It seems like fairness really matters to you here." When you label emotion accurately, people relax, they feel seen, and that softens defenses, which makes agreement more likely. Remember, people aren't logical calculators. They're human, and humans want to feel understood. When you give them that, through listening, through patience, through empathy, they trust you more than the person who shows up with spreadsheets and bullet points. In fact, some of the most successful negotiators win not because they had the strongest case, but because they made the other person feel like they were on the same team. That's what real listening creates. Alignment. But don't stop at listening. Take notes, mentally or physically. Then later in the conversation, refer back. You mentioned earlier that speed of delivery was important. Here's how this proposal addresses that. This shows attentiveness. It builds credibility. It proves you're not just negotiating, you're collaborating. It also gives you a powerful tool later on, when things get tense. You can say, "Let's go back to what we both agreed mattered: simplicity, trust, and results." And just like that, you've recentered the conversation. This isn't manipulation. This is connection. It's the difference between forcing deals and forging them. In every negotiation, you are either proving your point or earning trust. The best do both. But they start with trust, and trust begins with listening. So, from now on, commit to speaking less and hearing more. Listen not just for logic, but for emotion, for values, for vision. Use silence as a tool. Use questions as a bridge. Use empathy as leverage. Because in that space between their words is everything you need to win. And once you've mastered listening, there's still one thing that will test you more than any other. Rejection. The moment when someone tells you no. How you respond next. That will define the strength of your negotiation muscles. And in the next chapter, you'll learn to stop fearing rejection and start using it. Rejection stings. It tightens your chest, floods your mind with doubt, and makes your next words harder to find. You ask for what you deserve, and they say no. You offer your best work, and they pass. You prepare, you believe, you listen, and still, they shut the door. That's the moment that separates those who negotiate occasionally from those who master it for life. Because the best negotiators don't fear rejection. They expect it. They embrace it. They understand that no is not the end of the negotiation. It's the beginning of a deeper one. When someone says no, they're not always saying never. More often, they're saying not like this, or I don't understand yet, or I'm afraid. Rejection, when handled with grace, gives you access to the real problem, and solving real problems is what powerful negotiators do. But let's get honest. Your instinct when you hear no might be to back down, to apologize, to say, okay, thanks anyway. That's not wrong. It's human. But that's also the moment where your training must kick in. You take a breath, you ground yourself, and instead of retreating, you lean in. The single most powerful question you can ask after hearing no is this: what would need to change for this to become a yes? That sentence reopens the door. It invites collaboration. It tells the other person that you're here to solve, not to push. And it creates a bridge, not a wall. Let's look at a real-world example. Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, was rejected by over 200 investors before someone finally believed in his vision. Did he shrink with each no? No. He refined, reframed, regrouped. Every rejection gave him more insight. Every no made him sharper. Today, millions walk into Starbucks because one man learned how to stay in the game. You must do the same. Not because you're invincible, but because you're committed. And commitment means learning how to reframe rejection. When they say, it's too expensive, don't internalize it. Instead, ask, is it the price itself or how the value is structured? If they say, we're going with someone else, ask, what did they offer that made the decision easier? If they say, we're not ready, respond, what would make the timing right? These questions do three things. They give you clarity. They keep the relationship intact. They sometimes change the outcome entirely. Even if you don't salvage the deal, you walk away with intelligence. And that intelligence fuels the next conversation. Sometimes rejection isn't even about you. It's about their fear, their boss, their budget, their past experiences. When you treat rejection as data, not judgment, you stay in control. And control is everything. Not control of the other person, control of yourself, your emotions, your body language, your breath. Tim Castle talks about using an emotional buffer, a mindset technique where you rehearse rejection before the negotiation. You visualize the no, you hear it in your head, you feel the discomfort, and then you stay calm anyway. You respond with curiosity, not defensiveness. This is mental conditioning. It builds resilience so that when rejection comes in real life, it feels familiar, manageable, non-threatening. Remember, rejection doesn't mean you're wrong. It means the match, at that moment, isn't right. And that's okay. The best negotiators don't need every deal to go through. They know that one strong yes beats 10 fragile maybes. There's also a strategy called rejection reframing. Here's how it works. You take the rejection and turn it into a negotiation checkpoint. Let's say you offer a service package, and they say, that's outside our budget. Instead of walking away, you ask, if we adjusted the scope while maintaining the core outcomes, would that make this more feasible? You're not caving, you're adapting, without compromising your worth. And that's key. Never let rejection make you shrink. Let it challenge you to sharpen, to ask better questions, to clarify your value, to communicate with more precision. Think about J.K. Rowling. 12 publishers rejected her manuscript for Harry Potter. But she didn't rewrite the heart of the story. She didn't dilute the magic to make it more marketable. She believed in it and kept refining her pitch. The 13th said yes. The rest is history. Rejection tests your belief, yes, but it also reveals your boundaries. Sometimes a no helps you realize this wasn't your deal, this wasn't your match, and walking away was the real win. Because here's a secret most won't tell you. Saying no is also a negotiation skill. There will be times when you hear an offer, and everything in you wants to make it work. But something feels off. Maybe the terms are skewed. Maybe the respect is missing. Maybe your intuition is whispering, "This will cost more than it gives." In those moments, rejection is your gift. It's your filter. And when you trust it, you protect your energy, your integrity, your long-term game. You also preserve your posture. Because when people see that you don't beg, you don't chase, you don't crumble under pressure, they treat you differently. The next time they negotiate with you, they come in with respect. And that's what we're building here. Long-term power, not short-term wins. So, the next time you hear no, pause. Ground yourself. Then ask, what's the concern behind that? What would need to happen for this to move forward? Is this a hard no or a not yet? You'll be amazed how often no becomes let's keep talking, or even yes, because rejection is not failure, it's feedback. And feedback used well becomes fuel. You're not here to avoid rejection, you're here to transform it. And once you do, you'll find a new level of confidence. Not the loud kind, but the unshakable kind. The kind that shows up even when you're uncertain. And in the next section, you'll learn how to build that kind of confidence every single day until it becomes who you are. Confidence doesn't appear overnight. It's not something you find. It's something you build intentionally, consistently, and through repetition. The kind of confidence that holds up under pressure, that keeps your voice steady when your future is on the line, is the result of preparation, self-awareness, and daily practice. It's not about being fearless. It's about having something stronger than fear, belief anchored in evidence. Real, unshakable confidence is born from the quiet work no one sees. It's built in early mornings when you rehearse your ask, in the moments you hold eye contact instead of looking away, in the small wins you stack day after day until they create a mountain of self-trust. Confidence is not a gift, it's a result. Start by collecting evidence. Make a list of times when you spoke up and it went well. Times when you advocated for yourself and got the result. Times when you felt fear but acted anyway. These are your receipts, your reminders. When doubt creeps in, you don't argue with it, you show it proof. Even a small example matters. Remember that one time you asked for a refund and got it? Or when you said no to something that didn't serve you? That's you stepping into authority. That's where confidence starts. Now let's go deeper. Confidence lives in your body before it lives in your voice. Your posture, your breath, your movement, these are signals, not just to others, but to yourself. Stand tall, shoulders back, head level. Breathe from your diaphragm. Speak slower. This isn't about performance, it's about regulation. Because when your body feels safe, your brain follows. Tim Castle teaches that posture precedes presence. If you walk in like you belong, people respond accordingly. And more importantly, you begin to believe it too. Let's talk about language. Confidence isn't just in what you say, it's in how you say it. Confident communicators eliminate weak phrases. They don't say, "I think this could work." They say, "This is the right path based on the data." They don't say, "I'm not sure, but." They say, "Here's what I recommend." Your words shape your reality. If you keep using language that minimizes your presence, don't be surprised when others do too. Every time you speak, you are either affirming your value or shrinking it. Choose with intention. There's also power in detachment from outcome. This is the paradox of confidence. The less desperate you are to get the deal, the more likely you are to close it. Why? Because you're negotiating from strength, not survival. You want the opportunity, but you don't need it to validate your worth. You're here to serve, not to beg. And when you hold that posture, people notice. They feel it in your tone, in your pacing, in your stillness. You become magnetic. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough not to chase. That's confidence. But confidence is also emotional regulation. High-stakes conversations will spike your stress levels. Adrenaline will flood your system. Your throat might tighten. Your hands might sweat. That's normal. What separates you is how you respond to it. The confident negotiator doesn't pretend those feelings aren't there. They manage them. They breathe. They slow down. They pause before speaking. That pause is power. It's space to choose your response instead of reacting out of fear. You can train this every day through simple rituals. Start with affirmations. Not cheesy lines you don't believe, but real statements that reflect your intention. I am calm under pressure. I ask clearly and without apology. I offer value, and I know it. Repeat them, not because they're magic, but because they rewire your brain over time. Visualization is another tool. Athletes use it. CEOs use it. You should too. Close your eyes. Picture the negotiation. See yourself walking in, grounded. Hear your voice, clear, steady, composed. Feel the confidence in your body as you hold space. Ask for what you want and respond without flinching. Practice this daily, and your nervous system will begin to believe it's real. Confidence is also built through exposure. Seek out small opportunities to ask. At the coffee shop, ask for a discount. On a flight, ask for a seat change. In a meeting, ask for clarity. The more you practice asking in low-stakes situations, the easier it becomes in high-stakes ones. And here's something most people forget. Confidence is contagious. When you show up with certainty, others lean in. They mirror your energy. They trust your leadership. They follow your tone. This is especially true in negotiation, where tension is high and people are looking for someone to stabilize the room. You become that person. Look at Nelson Mandela. After 27 years in prison, he emerged not with bitterness, but with clarity, with calm, with quiet strength. His presence alone shifted global conversations. That's what happens when someone cultivates internal certainty that no external pressure can shake. You might not be leading a nation, but you are leading yourself. And that leadership begins with knowing you can trust yourself under fire. When the conversation gets hard, you stay calm. When someone challenges your worth, you don't flinch. When the stakes rise, so do you. That's real confidence. Not the kind you fake, the kind you earn. So make this your practice. Speak clearly, ask boldly, stand tall, breathe deeply. Let silence serve you. Because the confident negotiator is not the one who dominates the room. It's the one who doesn't need to. And when you own that presence, you no longer need to push your offer. Instead, you'll learn how to communicate value so clearly. They ask you how to move forward. In the next section, we'll explore that exact equation. How to present your value in a way that makes the ask feel like the obvious answer. Word count 12287. You don't have to sell if you can show value. That's the shift. The moment you stop pushing and start aligning, negotiation becomes easier, almost effortless. Because people don't buy products, services, or even ideas. They buy outcomes. They buy clarity. They buy certainty. And they buy from those who make them feel understood. That's what Tim Castle calls the value equation. A simple but profound shift in how you present yourself and your offer. And it begins with this principle. If you want someone to say yes, You must first show them what's in it for them, not just for you. Too often, people pitch from the inside out. Here's what I do. Here's my background. Here's my price. But none of that matters if it's not connected to what the other person truly wants. And here's the kicker. Most people don't even know what they truly want until someone helps them see it. That's your job, to be the one who reveals it, through questions, empathy, and framing. Start with clarity. If your offer is confusing, they'll say no. Not because it's bad, but because uncertainty feels risky. You need to present your value like a well-lit path. Simple, specific, no jargon, no fluff. The moment they get it, they start imagining themselves having it. That's the trigger. Next comes relevance. This is where your power multiplies. Is your offer tailored to them? Does it speak directly to their context, their priorities, their pain? If not, it's noise. The more relevant your message, the less resistance you face. Because now, it feels like a solution, not a sale. Let's take an example. You're offering consulting services to a growing startup. Don't lead with your credentials. Lead with their current pain point. You've got product traction, but internal chaos is slowing you down. What I do is create repeatable systems so you can scale without burning out your team. That's relevant. That's aligned. That opens the door. And then comes the most important piece of the value equation: trust. Without trust, nothing else matters. You could offer the perfect solution at the perfect price, but if they don't believe in you, they won't move. So how do you build trust in the short window of a negotiation? 1. Be consistent. Your words, your tone, your energy, they must align. If you sound unsure about your own offer, they'll sense it. If your body language contradicts your pitch, they'll hesitate. Trust is built when everything about you says, "I believe in this." 2. Use social proof. Share stories of others who've succeeded with your offer. Not to brag, but to reassure. Frame it like this. One of my recent clients was in a similar position. Within 60 days, we'd reduced their churn by 30%. You're not making claims. You're showing results. 3. Lead with service. Shift the mindset from selling to solving. When you approach a negotiation like a consultant, not a salesperson, everything changes. Your energy softens. Your questions deepen. Your credibility rises. Because now, you're not trying to close a deal. You're trying to help. And that's not just a mindset. It's a strategy. Because when people feel like you're genuinely there to serve them, they want to say yes. They want to reward your care. That's the psychology of reciprocity. But here's where most people go wrong. They bring up price too soon. Don't start with the number. Start with the vision. Show the destination before you show the toll. Once someone clearly sees the transformation your offer creates, the price feels smaller in comparison. It's called value anchoring. Frame the benefits before the cost. Paint the picture of the outcome. Use phrases like, "Here's what this allows you to do. Here's what others have achieved with this. This is how this solves your biggest roadblock." Then, when you present the price, it's not a number. It's an investment. And it feels justified. Another tool? Value stacking. Don't rely on one single benefit to carry the offer. Stack multiple elements that together feel irresistible. For example, you offer a service, you add a 30-day implementation guide, you include 2 strategy calls, you offer follow-up support. Now your offer isn't just a thing, it's a package. And packages sell better than pieces. But be careful. Don't overwhelm. Keep it clean. The goal is ease, not confusion. Use visuals, analogies, or bullet points if needed. The simpler it feels, the more they lean in. You also have to believe in the price yourself. If you hesitate, they'll hesitate. If you present it like you're bracing for impact, they'll start searching for why it's too high. But if you speak it as a matter of fact, calmly, confidently, they'll match your energy. That's how value is transmitted. Through tone, through conviction, through presence. And don't forget timing. Sometimes, the best way to present value is to wait. Let them talk. Let them reveal their concerns, their desires, their frustrations. Then, when you speak, it lands like an answer they've been waiting for. That's what makes it feel obvious. That's how you sell without selling. One final shift. Start thinking like a guide, not a gladiator. You're not here to fight. You're here to walk alongside, to map the journey, to illuminate what's possible. When you lead with that energy, resistance fades. The conversation becomes collaborative, and the deal becomes inevitable. Because when someone sees that you understand them, that you've built something for them, and that you believe in it, they want it. They ask you how to move forward, and that's when negotiation transcends tactics. It becomes influence, presence, service. So stop trying to convince, start helping them see. And in the next section, you'll learn that the most powerful move isn't a clever phrase. It's knowing when to say nothing at all. Silence, used strategically, can reveal more than any pitch ever could. Silence isn't empty. It's not passive. It's not absence. In negotiation, silence is presence, amplified. It's the invisible pressure that causes people to reveal what they wouldn't under questioning. It's the pause that carries more weight than 1,000 words. When you learn to use silence strategically, you gain access to truths most people will never hear. Why does silence work? Because people are uncomfortable with it. We are wired to fill space, to explain, justify, smooth over. But the trained negotiator holds space and waits. And in that waiting, power shifts. After you make an ask, you stop. That's it. No follow-up. No nervous clarifications. No rambling to make it sound more palatable. Just stop. Most people can't stand it, so they talk. And when they do, they often reveal their next move, their priorities, or even a hidden flexibility they hadn't planned to share. Imagine you say, "I'm looking for a base of $95,000 in quarterly performance bonuses." Then, silence. You watch, you breathe, you wait. On the other side, discomfort builds. If they speak first, you win. Not because they gave in, but because they showed their hand. This is called after-ask silence, and it's one of your most powerful tools. Not because it's manipulative, but because it's honest. You're saying, "Here's what I want," and you're letting them process without pressure. Another powerful moment for silence. After objection. Let's say they respond, "That's a bit high for us." Most people would jump in, offer to compromise, rush to preserve the deal. But you hold. And in that pause, they often continue. "But maybe there's room in another budget." Or, "We could make that work if we adjusted the timeline." See? Silence invited truth. There's also what Castle calls reflective silence. When someone says something important, and instead of replying instantly, you pause. You nod. You let it land. This shows depth. It signals respect. It tells them you're considering their words, not just reacting. And that creates rapport, which is a form of currency in negotiation. Let's take this further. There's the silence before the close. You've shared your offer, answered their questions, and now it's time to decide. This is not the moment to start explaining again. This is the moment to be still. Because silence doesn't just create pressure, it communicates confidence. It says, "I've said what I need to say. I trust it stands on its own." That's powerful. Even culturally, silence plays differently. In some regions, long pauses are respectful. In others, they're perceived as discomfort. As a negotiator, you must become fluent in silence across settings. Observe, adjust, adapt, but never abandon the pause. Just shape it for the room. Silence also helps you observe nonverbal cues. When you're not focused on speaking, you can actually see the crossed arms, the flicker of doubt, the raised brow when you mention timeline. These are micro signals, tiny windows into what matters most to the person in front of you. And when you catch them, you can tailor your response with precision. Here's a story from a real estate deal. A seller listed a property at $500,000. The buyer offered $470,000 and then fell silent. The seller, uncomfortable with the pause, blurted out, "Well, we might be able to meet at $480,000. The buyer hadn't even responded yet. Silence created movement, not manipulation, opportunity. That's how negotiation often works. The best move is no move. The most strategic phrase is a breath held a little longer. Not because you're trying to trap anyone, but because you understand that people reveal truth in space, not pressure. There's also a type of silence that earns trust: empathic stillness. When someone expresses frustration or concern, and you simply sit with it, no fixing, no defending, just presence. That stillness says, "I hear you. I see you. I'm here to understand, not overpower." That's rare, and that's memorable. So how do you practice silence? Start in daily conversations. When a friend finishes a sentence, don't respond right away. Count 2 seconds. See what happens. When someone shares a complaint, don't rush to solve it. Pause. Breathe. Let them continue. Notice how they open up more because you didn't rush them. In meetings, when someone raises a problem, wait. Let the room breathe. Silence creates space for smarter solutions to emerge. People fill gaps. Let them. And sometimes, those words they add, that's where the breakthrough lives. In your rehearsals, practice making the ask and then staying quiet. It'll feel uncomfortable at first. You'll want to fill the air. Don't. Get used to the tension. Make peace with it. Own it. Because once you do, you'll carry that power into every high-stakes moment. There's also the silence between deals. Not every conversation ends in agreement. And in those moments, silence helps you reset, reflect, learn. Not every battle is won by pushing harder. Sometimes you step back and let clarity come in the quiet. Because silence isn't retreat, it's refinement. In your next negotiation, remember this: words move people, but silence reveals them. And once they're revealed, you can meet them where they are. That's not just persuasion, that's wisdom. So use silence. Use it to listen deeper, see clearer, and lead stronger. And next, you'll take that power even further by learning how to build win-win agreements that not only close the deal, but open the door to long-term success. A win isn't truly a win if the other side walks away feeling like they've lost. Because what you gain in the moment, you lose in the long term. Trust, reputation, future collaboration. That's why the most masterful negotiators don't aim for domination. They aim for alignment. They build deals that last, that hold, that generate goodwill and opportunity beyond the closing moment. This is the heart of win-win negotiation. Not a soft ideal, but a strategic decision. And it starts with a mindset shift. From positional bargaining to interest-based collaboration, most people enter negotiations thinking in fixed terms. I want a lower price. I need more time. They need to give in. That's positional thinking. It leads to tug-of-war dynamics, where both sides defend territory instead of exploring common ground. But smart negotiators go deeper. They ask, what's behind that position? Because underneath every demand is an interest, a need, a concern, a value. And interests are flexible. They create room for creativity. Take this example. A vendor says, we can't lower the price. That's their position. But dig deeper, and you learn they're under pressure to hit revenue targets. Their interest isn't just money, it's performance. So instead of cutting price, you offer a longer contract term or early payment. Suddenly, you've met their interest without touching your number. That's win-win thinking, not compromising, reconfiguring. Tim Castle teaches that successful agreements aren't just about terms, they're about trust. And trust is built when both parties walk away feeling heard, respected, and empowered. That's how relationships form. That's how repeat deals happen. That's how reputations are built. So how do you build a win-win? First, surface the interests. Ask questions like, what matters most to you in this deal? What would make this feel like a win on your end? What concerns are you balancing right now? These questions invite transparency. They show maturity. They tell the other side, I'm not just here to take, I'm here to build. Second, be transparent. Strategically, you don't need to reveal every detail, but sharing your priorities creates a more collaborative tone. It disarms the fear of hidden agendas. If you say, one of our priorities is flexibility in delivery, the other side might offer it proactively because you gave them something to work with. Transparency breeds cooperation. Next, look for creative trade-offs. Castle calls this log rolling, conceding on issues that matter less to you in exchange for gains on what matters more. You might accept a longer timeline if it means higher margin, or give ground on delivery schedule in return for a larger order. These trades are only visible when interests are clear. Win-win deals are rarely 50-50 in structure, but they are 100-100 in satisfaction. Now let's talk about fairness. People don't just evaluate deals logically, they weigh them emotionally. If something feels unfair, even if the numbers make sense, they resist. So bring fairness into the conversation. Say, I want this to feel equitable on both sides. Let's use market standards as our baseline. Here's why I think this proposal balances value well. This isn't just ethical, it's persuasive. Because fairness removes friction, but clarity is just as important. Document everything. Don't rely on memory. Don't assume understanding. Spell out the agreement clearly, precisely, with no room for interpretation. This doesn't show distrust. It shows professionalism, and it prevents future confusion. Now, consider the structure of the deal. Win-win isn't always about splitting money or deadlines. It's also about terms, payment flexibility, support services, performance-based bonuses, trial periods, renewal options. These elements shape how value is delivered and protected. Use them. Let's look at a powerful example. In the early 2000s, when Apple launched the iTunes Music Store, they faced resistance from record labels. The labels didn't want to lose control over pricing. But Steve Jobs reframed the deal. Instead of fighting over price points, he focused on a shared interest, fighting piracy and reviving the music industry. The result? Apple got digital rights, and labels got revenue. That was a win-win. Not because everyone got what they wanted, but because everyone got what they needed. That's what you're aiming for. Now, some might ask, what if the other party is purely competitive? What if they don't care about win-win? Here's the key. You still lead with it. You model it. You propose it. And if they reject the spirit of collaboration, you use that clarity to walk away with your integrity intact. Because win-win isn't weakness, it's strength. It's confidence that says, I don't need to crush you to succeed. In fact, Castle warns that win-lose deals often become lose-lose in disguise. A client forced into a bad contract leaves bad reviews. A supplier squeezed too hard cuts corners. A team member pushed to burn out underperforms. Short-term gains collapse when there's no alignment. But when people feel good about the deal, they protect it. They defend it. They deliver on it. That's the secret. Win-win deals aren't just good business. They're good leadership. And every time you build one, you strengthen your reputation as someone who's not just effective, but respected. So from now on, ask yourself, am I focusing on positions or interests? Have I created space for shared success? Does this deal serve relationships, not just results? Because negotiation isn't a battlefield, it's a bridge. And in the next section, we'll explore what that bridge is built on: ethics. Because your values, not your tactics, will define the kind of deals that follow you for life. Reputation is the shadow that follows every negotiation you enter. Long after the contract is signed or the deal is declined, what lingers is how you made people feel, whether they trusted you, whether they respected you, whether they'd work with you again. That's why the greatest negotiators don't just master tactics, they master ethics. Ethics in negotiation isn't some soft code of conduct for idealists. It's a strategic asset. Tim Castle makes this point clear. Trust is not a byproduct. It's the foundation. If people don't trust you, they withhold. They conceal information. They build defenses. And when that happens, deals get slower, smaller, or disappear altogether. But when you're known as someone who operates with integrity, everything accelerates. People open up. They cooperate. They come back to the table. They refer you to others because they know you're not playing games. You're playing straight. So what does ethical negotiation actually look like? First, it starts with honesty, without naivety. You don't have to reveal every card you hold, but you also don't lie about the ones you show. You can be strategic and truthful at the same time. That balance earns you respect. For example, if you're not ready to reveal your full budget, you can say, "We're still finalizing internal priorities, but I can give you a general range." That's honest. That's fair. And it keeps the relationship intact. But if you lie, if you fabricate numbers, invent pressure, or use false scarcity, you might win the moment and lose the relationship. People aren't stupid. They may not call you out right away, but they feel the manipulation. And even if the deal closes, they remember the discomfort. And when it's time for renewal, recommendation, or long-term trust, they walk. Second, ethical negotiation means respecting the other party's autonomy. Don't force. Don't trick. Guide, influence, lead, yes, but always leave room for choice. People need to feel like the agreement was theirs to make. When someone says, "I need time to think," honor it. When they express concern, acknowledge it. Pushing past those signals may get you a signature, but it will not get you loyalty. Tim Castle calls this negotiating with clean hands. You win, but you win in a way you're proud of. That pride isn't just personal, it's professional equity. It builds your name. Think of Warren Buffett, one of the most successful negotiators of our time, yet universally respected. Why? Because he leads with transparency. When Buffett makes a deal, people know what he says is what he means. That clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates cooperation. Now let's talk about dealing with unethical behavior. What if the person across from you plays dirty? What if they lie, manipulate, or mislead? You respond without mirroring it. If they bluff, you clarify. If they hide terms, you surface them. If they push unethically, you calmly name it. I want to make sure we're both negotiating on shared facts. Is there something I'm missing here? That one sentence resets the tone. It says, I see what you're doing, and I'm not going there. You don't escalate, you elevate. And if the tactics continue, you walk, not out of ego, out of ethics, because you know that how you win matters just as much as what you win. Walking away is not weakness. It's your reputation saying, I don't trade values for victories. There's also the matter of disclosure. You have to decide what's fair to share. Castle recommends disclosing interests, not necessarily bottom lines. For example, say, we're prioritizing long-term support over upfront cost. That reveals what matters without surrendering leverage. It fosters alignment, not exposure. Another ethical challenge: making promises. Be careful. In the heat of a negotiation, it's tempting to overpromise just to close. Don't. Because whatever you promise, you'll be expected to deliver. And if you fall short, even slightly, the damage to trust is disproportionate. It's better to promise less and over-deliver than to inflate value and underwhelm. Ethics also applies to handling mistakes. If you misstate something, correct it. If you forgot a term, acknowledge it. That moment of vulnerability may feel risky, but it strengthens your credibility. People remember integrity. And here's something subtle. Ethics isn't just about what you say, it's about what you tolerate. If someone on your team bends the truth or uses manipulative pressure and you allow it, that becomes your reputation too. So build a culture around you that reflects your values. That's how your name becomes a signal of trust in the marketplace. Tim Castle also urges negotiators to be culturally aware. Ethics vary across borders. What feels honest in one culture might feel evasive in another. So before any negotiation, do your homework. Understand how respect is expressed, how decisions are made, how silence, deference, and authority function. Ethical intent must meet contextual intelligence. Now let's bring it back to you. Ask yourself, what lines will I never cross? What does fair mean to me? Am I negotiating to extract or to create? These questions shape your ethical framework. They give you clarity before the conversation even begins. And that clarity becomes your compass, especially when the stakes are high. There's a story of a founder who was offered a massive buyout, but the terms required cutting his team out of their equity. It would have made him rich, but he walked. He said, I didn't build this alone. I'm not selling it alone. That decision cost him money, but it made him a legend. Years later, his company was acquired again, and this time, everyone won. That's the legacy of ethics. Because negotiation isn't just about closing deals, it's about opening doors. And when people trust you, really trust you, those doors don't close. They multiply. So lead with clarity, honor your word, respect the room, and when in doubt, choose principle over pressure. In the next section, you'll learn how to take all this inner strength and direct it into external readiness. We're returning to a crucial theme: preparation. But now, not just mental or tactical, This time, you'll master the environment, the conditions, and the scenarios that make your negotiation unshakable from every angle. The strongest negotiator isn't the one who improvises best. It's the one who prepares deepest. And preparation isn't just about knowing your numbers or memorizing your pitch. It's about designing the entire environment of the negotiation, physical, emotional, and strategic, so that success is not just possible, it's probable. You've already learned that preparation is armor. Now, it becomes your engine, powering every move, reducing uncertainty, and giving you clarity under fire. So let's break it down. First, revisit your objective. Not just what you want, but why it matters, and where you're willing to flex. Preparation begins with clarity. What's your ideal outcome? What's your acceptable range? Where's your non-negotiable line? Tim Castle recommends putting it in writing. Not just a mental note, a visible anchor. Seeing it on paper, your ask, your fallback, your walk away, trains your brain to orient around boundaries. And when pressure rises, that clarity holds you steady. Next, profile the other party. This is where amateurs guess. Professionals investigate. Who are they? What are their interests? What pressures are they facing internally? Have they worked with someone like you before? What's their communication style? Formal, fast-paced, methodical. Gather data. LinkedIn insights, industry news, competitor moves, even tone from prior emails. Every detail is leverage if you know how to read it. The more you understand their world, the better you can speak their language. Then assess contextual factors. Timing, market dynamics, urgency. Is this Q4 and they need to spend budget? Are layoffs coming? Are they launching something new? Context changes everything. In one tech partnership, a startup secured premium terms not by haggling harder, but by understanding the larger company was under pressure to finalize vendor deals before their earnings call. That timing, that context, was invisible leverage, but only because someone did the prep. Now let's talk BATNA. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If this deal doesn't close, what's your next move? Where will you pivot? What's your backup plan? Castle says this is the most empowering prep step of all. Because once you know your BATNA, desperation disappears. You negotiate from choice, not from need. You're not cornered. You're anchored. But go further. Don't just know your BATNA, strengthen it. If you're negotiating a job offer, line up another interview. If you're in client talks, have another lead warming. Confidence increases with options, and the other side can feel when you have them. Now, prepare your opening message. The first 60 seconds of your pitch. This isn't filler. It sets the emotional tone. It establishes whether the conversation feels tense or collaborative. Avoid fluff. Avoid small talk that wastes time. Instead, say something that frames the space. I'm excited to explore this together. My goal is clarity and alignment. And if we find that, I believe we can build something that works for both sides. That one line tells them you're here to collaborate, not compete. It lowers walls. It earns you room to speak. Then comes the objection map. This is where elite prep happens. List every possible pushback you might face. That price is too high. We've never done it that way. 2, we don't have internal buy-in. Then next to each one, write your response. Not a defense. A calm, value-driven reply. For example, objection. Your rates are higher than others we've seen. Response. That's true. And I've found that clients who work with me aren't just buying the service. They're buying the peace of mind that it will be done right the first time. You're not arguing, you're aligning. And because you prepared this response in advance, you deliver it smoothly, not emotionally. Now visualize multiple scenarios. Best case, worst case, most likely. Mentally rehearse what you'll do if they go silent, if they ask for a surprise concession, if they bring in a third party. Imagine those moments now, so you won't freeze when they happen later. Athletes do this. Surgeons do this. You should too. Then prepare your logistics. Where will the conversation happen? In person? On Zoom? Who's in the room? Are they the decision maker or a gatekeeper? What's the time limit? What's the agenda? Control what you can. If you're hosting, choose a space that gives you psychological advantage. Quiet, well-lit, private. If it's virtual, test your tech. Eliminate distractions. Show up composed, not chaotic. These small choices affect big outcomes. Now prepare your materials. Do you need a slide, a proposal, a simple document that summarizes your value? If yes, make sure it's clear, concise, and focused on outcomes, not credentials. People don't care about your resume. They care about what you'll solve. And finally, prepare yourself. This means more than clothes and notes. It means mindset. Take 10 minutes before the meeting to ground your breath. Say your affirmations. Review your anchor goals. Visualize composure. Remind yourself, I know my value. I'm here to collaborate, not chase. I don't need this. I choose it. That last line is key. Because when you walk in by choice, you walk in with power. You're not guessing, you're leading. Think of Serena Williams before a match. She doesn't wonder how she'll serve. She's rehearsed it 1,000 times. You do the same. Because the real work of negotiation doesn't happen during the meeting. It happens before. And the more you prepare, the less you have to recover. So from now on, make preparation a ritual, not a reaction. Build checklists, block time, train like a professional. Because when the moment comes, you won't be scrambling for your words. You'll already know exactly what to say and exactly how to say it. And next, you'll learn how to shift from the formal framework of preparation into the human element that holds it all together. Rapport. Because logic gets deals started, but connection is what gets them closed. People say yes to people they trust. They open up to people they feel safe with. They work harder for people they like. That's why the most overlooked skill in negotiation isn't a tactic. It's rapport. Rapport isn't about being overly friendly or cracking jokes at the wrong time. It's about building connection through respect, presence, and emotional attunement. When you establish rapport, tension drops. Conversations become smoother. Agreements happen faster and with less resistance. Tim Castle puts it simply, rapport is your doorway to influence. It begins the moment you show up. Before you speak a word, you're already communicating. Through posture, through eye contact, through energy. If you walk in guarded, stiff, distracted, that's what you project. But if you walk in open, calm, grounded, you signal confidence and respect. So how do you build instant rapport? Start with mirroring, subtly. Match the other person's tone, pace, even body language. If they speak slowly, don't rush. If they're formal, don't get too casual too fast. This doesn't mean you become someone else. It means you show them you're paying attention. People like people who seem familiar. When you reflect their communication style, you reduce subconscious resistance. Next, be fully present. No glancing at your phone. No scanning the room. Nothing breaks rapport faster than divided attention. Make the other person feel like they are the most important thing in that moment. Because in that moment, they are. Then listen actively. Nod. Ask follow-up questions. Use their name. Reflect back what they've said. If they say, "We're under a lot of pressure this quarter." Respond with, "Sounds like the timing has been intense. I imagine your team's juggling a lot." That reflection creates empathy, and empathy builds trust. Also, find common ground early. It doesn't have to be big. Shared geography, industry challenges, even mutual acquaintances can humanize the conversation. "You're based in Denver? I used to live just outside Boulder." That's not small talk. That's social glue. Let's look at a real-world example. Former FBI negotiator Chris Voss shares that in hostage situations, rapport often made the difference between life and death. He didn't scream demands. He built connection, slowly, respectfully, by matching tone and creating emotional safety. That's what opened the door for resolution. Now imagine what that kind of skill does in a business deal. Rapport also shows up in how you handle conflict. When tension rises, people instinctively brace. But you breathe. You slow down. You speak softer, not louder. You say things like, "I can sense we're seeing this differently. Let's unpack that together." That approach keeps bridges intact, even when conversations get hard. Humor can help, if used wisely. A light, appropriate comment can relieve pressure and remind everyone that behind the roles, we're still just people. But read the room. Forced humor backfires. Respect always comes first. Another key? Authenticity. Don't pretend to care. Actually care. Don't nod mechanically. Actually listen. People are wired to detect inauthenticity. They may not call it out, but they feel it. And once that trust is cracked, it's hard to repair. So be honest. If you don't know something, say so. If you made a mistake, own it. That humility does more for rapport than a dozen perfect slides ever will. Now let's address cultural awareness. Rapport doesn't look the same everywhere. In some cultures, direct eye contact is essential. In others, it's a sign of disrespect. Some value speed and efficiency. Others require relationship building before business begins. If you're entering a cross-cultural negotiation, do your research. Learn how respect is expressed, how decisions are made, how hierarchy is handled. A single gesture, like handing a business card with both hands in Japan, can signal deep respect or careless ignorance. Rapport isn't about treating everyone the same. It's about treating everyone the way they need to be treated. And rapport isn't just for the opening moments. It must be maintained throughout. That means honoring commitments, following up when you say you will, checking in after agreements are made, asking how things are going, not just when you want something. This post-negotiation rapport is where loyalty is born. It's where clients become advocates, where partners become allies. There's a story about a contractor who, after landing a major deal, sent a handwritten note and a small thank you gift to the procurement lead. No agenda, just gratitude. That person later left the company, but when they joined a new firm, guess who got the first call? The one who nurtured rapport, even after the paperwork was done. Because rapport compounds, it builds a reputation. So how do you practice it? Begin every negotiation with presence, not pressure. Reflect their tone and pace without mimicking. Listen with full attention, not to respond, but to understand. Show genuine interest in who they are, not just what they offer. Close every conversation with warmth, clarity, and appreciation. You don't have to be the most charismatic person in the room. You just have to care, visibly and consistently. That's what creates connection, and connection creates movement. In the next section, we'll move from building relationships to mastering the entire process. All the mindsets, strategies, and frameworks will come together, not just to help you win one deal, but to negotiate your life with purpose, clarity, and impact. This is where everything converges. The beliefs you've restructured, the skills you've sharpened, the mindset you've adopted, they all become one unified approach to life. Because negotiation is not a one-time performance. It's not just for business deals, salary conversations, or contracts. It's the lens through which you shape your entire experience. Every day, you are negotiating with others, with systems, with time, with yourself. You're negotiating how much energy to give, what boundaries to enforce, what stories to believe, whether to say yes or whether to finally say no. And those decisions compound. They write your life script. Tim Castle doesn't just teach negotiation as a tool. He teaches it as a way of showing up, with clarity, with intention, with ownership. So let's tie it together. You began by learning that you're always negotiating, whether you realize it or not. That awareness gave you power. No longer are you reacting blindly. Now you see influence in action. You hear power in the way people speak. You notice how silence fills space, and you begin to reclaim your role in shaping outcomes. Then you built the foundation. Belief, not in bravado, but in value, in your own voice. You stopped waiting for external validation. You realized that if you don't believe you deserve more, no one else will either. You layered that belief with preparation. Not guesswork, but structure. You planned with precision. You studied your counterpart. You defined your bhatna. You walked in ready, not because you hoped for the best, but because you built the readiness to handle anything. And then, you learned to ask, clearly, boldly, without apology. You dropped the soft language. You ditched the hesitation. You learned to speak in outcomes, not just offers. But you didn't stop at speaking. You mastered the art of listening, of hearing what's not said, of watching body language, of giving space so others could open up. You made people feel seen, and in doing so, you earned their trust. You faced rejection and didn't crumble. Instead of walking away bruised, you leaned in curious. You turned no into not yet. You asked what needed to change. You turned feedback into fuel, and through it all, you cultivated confidence. Not the loud kind, the grounded kind. Confidence that speaks even in silence, that holds steady when challenged, that owns the room without needing to control it. Then came value, learning how to present it with clarity, relevance, and trust. You stopped selling. You started solving. You learned to position your offer so well that others leaned forward and asked, "How do we make this happen?" You learned to wield silence like a scalpel, to let the pause work for you, to let stillness speak louder than persuasion, and you built win-win outcomes, deals that honored both sides. That expanded the pie before dividing it. That created not just results, but relationships. You held yourself to ethical standards, even when no one was watching. You walked away from short-term gain to protect long-term integrity. And that decision made you magnetic, trustworthy, reputable. You returned to preparation with renewed depth. You crafted environments for success. You mapped scenarios. You rehearsed objections. You made readiness a lifestyle. You invested in rapport, not as a tactic, but as a human skill. You saw people as people. You built bridges that endured long past the deal. And now, you own it. You don't just know how to negotiate. You live it. You breathe it. You use it to create alignment in every area of your life. Whether you're leading a team, advocating for a project, navigating family dynamics, or building your career, you negotiate with purpose. That's what makes you powerful. And this journey doesn't end here. Because true mastery isn't about knowing all the right moves. It's about returning to the fundamentals again and again. Reflecting, practicing, adjusting, staying curious, staying sharp, staying humble. You now have a framework that works. But more importantly, you've become a person who works the framework. So as you move forward, ask yourself daily, what am I negotiating right now? Even unconsciously, what outcome do I want? And how am I aligning toward it? What value am I creating? And how am I communicating it? These questions keep you awake. They keep you intentional. They keep you in the arena. Because every conversation is a chance to lead. Every offer is a mirror of your worth. Every silence is an opportunity to listen deeper. And every rejection is an invitation to refine. So keep going, keep showing up, keep negotiating, not to overpower, but to align. Not to win at their expense, but to win with them. Not to control outcomes, but to own your role in creating them. And in the next section, you'll gather everything you've learned into a final, lasting reflection. One that invites you to live this skill not just in boardrooms, but in every breath of the life you lead. You are always negotiating, with time, with opportunity, with your own energy. And now, with everything you've internalized, you begin to see how the principles of negotiation expand far beyond deals and conversations. They become a map, a compass, a way of walking through life with intention over reaction, with presence over passivity. At this point, the tactics fade into instinct. You don't need to remember what to say or how to sit. You embody it. You live from the core truth. You are the most powerful person in the room when you know who you are and what you're here to create. And that truth doesn't start when a conversation begins. It starts the moment you frame reality, through the language you choose, the posture you hold, the energy you bring into every space. Let's revisit some real-life examples. When Malala Yousafzai sat before world leaders and calmly demanded that every girl in the world have access to education, she wasn't yelling. She wasn't pushing. She was negotiating from unshakable presence, grounded in purpose, clear in her ask, immune to fear. She didn't need to overpower. Her clarity was louder than any raised voice. That's the level you now operate from. And the framing of your ask? That's no longer about what you get. It's about the world you're building, one conversation at a time. Whether you're asking for a raise, proposing a collaboration, or setting a boundary with someone in your life, your ask now carries architecture. It is built on preparation, grounded in ethics, driven by empathy, and delivered with certainty. But let's stretch further. Negotiation doesn't stop when you speak. It's how you interpret what comes back to you. Do you crumble under pushback? Or do you lean in and translate rejection into refinement? Do you read resistance as conflict? Or as a signal that you're getting closer to the truth? This is where you master emotional calibration. You've seen it now. The calm pause after you ask. The holding of silence. The steady eye contact when someone challenges you. The ability to feel nerves and still hold your ground. You're no longer negotiating only externally. You're negotiating internally, with fear, with ego, with impulse. And now, you win that inner negotiation more often than you lose it. That's power. Let's not forget the value communication piece. It's not about proving you're good. It's about showing why your presence, your work, your offer creates a clear outcome for the other party. You're now fluent in the language of relevance and resonance. You don't drop facts and stats. You frame what matters to them through the lens of what you bring. And you do it without sounding arrogant, because you've practiced the tone. the structure, the proof. You've built the foundation. And the result? Your value no longer needs to be argued. It simply becomes self-evident. This flows naturally into relationship building. You know that no one likes to be sold to, but everyone loves to feel understood. You now ask questions that reveal people's real concerns. You echo their emotions back to them. You lead with, "Help me understand," not "Let me convince you." You create deals that feel good, not just look good. And that's why people remember you, refer you, reconnect with you again and again. But perhaps the most important piece here is that you now know when to walk. You no longer fear rejection. You recognize when a deal misaligns with your values, your timing, your mission. You don't cling. You release gracefully. And you walk into the next opportunity without dragging doubt behind you. You've shed the old story, the one where you needed permission, where you hoped to be picked, where you negotiated from scarcity. Now, you negotiate from abundance, from the belief that if not this door, the next one, if not this match, a better one. You've also learned to adjust in real time. Conversations shift. People change their minds. New information surfaces. Instead of freezing, you pivot. You say, "Let's reframe that." You say, "Here's another way to look at it." You say, "How would it feel if we tried this approach?" That's what makes you dynamic, agile, trusted. And that brings us to this. You're no longer negotiating for victory. You're negotiating for alignment, for truth, for partnerships that elevate, for agreements that matter beyond the moment. Because your legacy isn't just the number of deals you close. It's how many people walk away from the table thinking, "That was different. That felt right." So here's your final shift. You don't just use negotiation anymore. You live it. It's in your posture, your boundaries, your presence in a meeting, your tone in an email, your silence in conflict, your clarity when asked, "What do you want?" It's not a tool in your hand. It's a truth in your spine. And in the next section, the final one, you'll bring all of this home with a reflection that sets the tone not just for your next conversation, but for the way you lead the rest of your life. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And in negotiation, your most powerful system is the way you prepare, position, and perceive every interaction. At this stage, you're no longer following steps. You're running a process that's uniquely yours. It's time to refine it. Tim Castle emphasizes that mastery doesn't come from having a playbook. It comes from being able to adapt the principles to any situation. So now we shift from static knowledge to flexible implementation. Let's start with self-checks before every engagement. These aren't about tactics. They're about alignment. Before every negotiation, ask, "Am I clear on what I want and why? Do I know what I'm willing to give? So what emotions am I bringing into this room? What story am I telling myself about my worth?" These questions ground you. They eliminate distraction. They tune your posture before the first word is spoken. Next, sharpen your ability to read the room in real time. You already know how to prepare. But now you must scan. What's not being said? What's shifting in energy? Where is resistance hiding behind polite smiles? This is where presence beats planning. When someone says, "Let me think about it," but starts closing their notebook, they're walking. Don't miss it. When someone says, "This is interesting," but keeps glancing at the door, there's misalignment. You don't plow ahead. You pivot. You say, "It seems like something's not quite landing. Want to unpack that?" That moment of attunement can bring the entire deal back on track. You're also mastering the ability to regulate the pace. Sometimes the room is tense. You slow it down. Other times, the energy is high. You ride the momentum. But you no longer follow passively. You guide rhythm like a skilled conductor adjusting tempo for maximum effect. Let's not forget the art of strategic summarizing. When a conversation gets complex, you now pause and say, "Let's pause here. So far, I'm hearing that X, Y, and Z matter most to you. Here's where I see overlap. Are we aligned so far?" This does three things: shows active listening, surfaces hidden disagreements, builds trust through clarity. It's one of the most powerful mid-negotiation tools you now wield, and it prevents costly miscommunication. Let's talk collaboration energy. Too often, people walk into negotiation thinking, it's me versus them. But you now know better. It's not adversarial, it's architectural. You're not trying to win over them. You're trying to build with them. And that subtle difference changes how you speak, how you frame, and how you close. You no longer say, "I need." You say, "Here's what would create the best outcome for both of us." You no longer say, "Here's my offer." You say, "Let's explore a version of this that works for both sides." This is how you lead without overpowering. This is how you guide without force. And when things do get tense, because they will, you now lean on neutral framing instead of escalation. Instead of, "You're not listening to me," you say, "Sounds like we're looking at this from two different angles." Instead of, "That's not fair," you say, "Let's revisit how we're defining value here." Language matters. Your words are levers. Precision in phrasing shifts emotional state. And you've practiced this long enough to know it's not manipulation. It's intentional influence. Another advanced layer? Pre-framing expectations before negotiations even begin. When you send an agenda, you now say, "Looking forward to the conversation. I'd love for us to come away with clarity on scope, timeline, and what success looks like on both ends." This primes collaboration. It reduces defensiveness. It builds momentum before you even arrive. And when the deal is nearly done, when the final terms are clear, you don't just shake hands and vanish. You cement relationships. You say, "Excited to move forward. I'm committed to this, working not just in contract, but in delivery." You check in post-signing. You thank them. You keep your word. Because how you exit a negotiation matters just as much as how you enter it. That follow-through builds something more powerful than a signature, a reputation. Your name becomes shorthand for clarity under pressure, calm under conflict, collaboration over coercion, results delivered with respect. And that reputation begins creating deals for you before you even show up. You become a magnet for aligned opportunities. Why? Because people trust what you bring and how you bring it. That's not just skill. That's presence. That's identity. So now, reflect. You've gone from hesitant asker to intentional architect, from being led to being the one who leads, from hoping for outcomes to designing them. And as you internalize these patterns, you'll find that negotiation becomes second nature. Not because you memorize lines, but because you move with conviction. You show up prepared. You speak with purpose. You listen with empathy. You walk with strength. You don't fake control. You are in control. Because negotiation no longer feels like something separate from you. It is you in motion. And in the next section, you'll learn how to use this new self, this new way of being, to not only secure outcomes, but shape your identity as a person of influence, respect, and vision. At this level, negotiation isn't just something you do. It becomes a reflection of who you are. Every deal you shape, every conversation you lead, every moment you choose presence over pressure, it all forms your personal brand. Not the kind printed on business cards or profiles, but the kind whispered in rooms you haven't entered yet. You're not just building influence. You're becoming someone who others trust to carry weight, to navigate complexity with calm, to find clarity in chaos, to create progress where others stall. This is where negotiation becomes identity, and identity begins with consistency. Consistency in how you speak, how you respond, how you recover. That's what people remember. It's not about being perfect. It's about being predictably intentional. When people know how you operate, that you listen before you speak, that you don't overpromise, that you negotiate fairly, they build expectations around your name. Your name becomes a shortcut for confidence, and this identity spills into every space: the workplace, the dinner table, the pitch room, the conflict, the collaboration. You become a trusted voice, not because you talk more, but because when you speak, people know it matters. Let's talk about reputation equity. You don't need to push when your name precedes you with respect. A colleague hears your offer and already feels safe. A client reads your email and knows it's rooted in clarity. A friend brings you into a deal saying, they don't just get results, they get people. That's the power of character-driven negotiation, and it starts internally. You've learned to master conversations with others, but here, you turn the lens inward. You ask, how do I negotiate with myself? When fear shows up, do I retreat or reframe? When I doubt my worth, do I default or decide? When I feel rushed, do I react or return to clarity? This is the highest form of negotiation, the internal alignment that fuels all external outcomes. Because you can't hold space for others if you're constantly abandoning your own. You now pause before commitments. You ask yourself, is this aligned with the vision I've chosen, or a distraction from it? That's not selfish, it's strategic. Because saying yes without boundaries is not generosity, it's self-erasure. And the more you reinforce this internal negotiation standard, the easier it becomes to uphold it with others. You don't chase, you don't convince. You invite, you guide, you hold ground with grace. People feel the difference. That's why people now respond to you with a different tone. It's not just respect, it's responsiveness. You've become the kind of person people want to work with because they feel safer around you. Safer to speak truth, to ask hard questions, to trust outcomes. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you build a track record, not just of closed deals, but of earned trust. Let's go further. This identity scales. Whether you're a solo founder or leading a team of hundreds, the way you negotiate becomes the culture you create. You're not just shaping contracts, you're shaping environments. When people see that you honor boundaries, they begin to honor their own. When people see that you ask clearly and calmly, they start doing the same. Your identity starts to replicate itself in the people around you. That's influence. It's no longer about your ability to win deals. It's about your ability to lead through integrity, clarity, and consistency. And let's not pretend it's always smooth. There will still be friction. There will still be pressure. But now, you don't flinch. Because pressure doesn't break you. It activates you. Pressure simply reveals what you've practiced, and you've practiced resilience, the kind that smiles in the face of rejection, that listens through tension, that speaks clearly through chaos, that calmly says no, not because you're rigid, but because you know what happens when you say yes to the wrong thing. You've also developed discernment. Not every opportunity is yours to chase. Not every conversation deserves your energy. You don't fight every battle. You choose where your presence makes the greatest difference, and that difference compounds. This is how power becomes quiet. No need to posture, no need to perform, just presence. And that presence opens doors without knocking. You become the person who negotiates without tension, because you've removed it from within. The person who speaks with clarity because you've practiced it in solitude. The person who carries influence because you've earned it through patterns, not moments. And so, negotiation no longer feels like a strategy. It feels like home. A place where your values, your boundaries, and your voice are all in sync. The way you talk to your clients, same as how you talk to your team. The way you negotiate a contract, same as how you negotiate your time. The way you handle pressure, same as how you handle power. This is identity at its peak. Not someone who just knows how to win, but someone who knows how to be. And in the next section, we'll begin the final arc. One that ties everything together: your internal power, your external skills, and your vision for leading a life designed not by accident, but by deliberate, thoughtful negotiation. The life you want won't negotiate with you unless you negotiate with it first. And by now, you understand that negotiation isn't just about tables and contracts. It's about designing alignment between your values, your vision, and your voice. That's the true evolution. Becoming the architect of your reality through conscious choice. You've gathered every tool. You've practiced every shift. Now we pull back and look at the full canvas. Where are you spending your time, your energy, your talent? If you're not negotiating those consciously, they're being negotiated for you. By distractions, by noise, by people with clearer agendas than yours. You are either in command of your priorities or you're at the mercy of someone else's. This is why personal negotiation is so critical. Because before you ask the world for a better deal, you must ask yourself the hardest question. Am I accepting less than I truly want, just to avoid discomfort? That discomfort may be fear of disappointing someone, or being seen as too much, or simply fear of change. But now you know, discomfort is not a stop sign. It's a doorway. And when you walk through it, you reclaim your power. So how do you negotiate with life? Start by declaring what you want, out loud. Not vaguely, not someday, not maybe when things slow down, but clearly like a negotiator who knows their worth. I want to work in spaces that energize me. I want relationships that respect my boundaries. I want compensation that reflects my contribution. I want time to think, rest, and create, not just produce. Then back that declaration with action. Say no to projects that dilute your energy. Say yes to fewer but deeper commitments. Block your calendar. Set your rates. Speak your limits. Stop negotiating against yourself before the world even shows up. This is the part most people miss. They learn the skills, but forget the standard. You've now set a new standard for how you show up. That standard must apply everywhere, not just in business, but in how you treat your health, how you spend your weekends, how you protect your mornings. Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you let people interrupt your thinking time, you'll let them interrupt your long-term goals. If you let a deal slide just this once, you'll start shrinking in every other conversation. But when you hold your line, even when it's hard, that identity strengthens. Tim Castle teaches that mastery isn't a one-time victory. It's built through every small moment when you could have compromised, but didn't. When you could have been silent, but spoke. When you could have folded, but asked again. With calm, with clarity, with conviction. These moments shape not just your outcomes, but your identity. And that identity begins to shape your world. Because now, others see it. They feel your clarity. They sense your boundaries. They hear your alignment in your words. And they respond in kind. You start attracting opportunities that are no longer transactional, but transformational. partnerships based on shared values, clients who respect your process, collaborations where trust isn't negotiated, it's assumed. That's not luck, that's positioning. Because when you negotiate life deliberately, life starts to align deliberately in return. And even when it doesn't, even when the world resists, you don't collapse. You pivot, you reframe. You come back with stronger preparation, deeper empathy, and sharper questions. You now operate with resilient clarity. You no longer fear rejection. You use it. You no longer chase affirmation. You stand in alignment. You no longer wait for perfect conditions. You move with purpose. And the most powerful shift? You begin teaching others without saying a word. Your presence models what's possible. For your colleagues, who start speaking up more. For your clients, who begin respecting boundaries more. For your family, who watch you hold integrity in the small things. For your future self, who will thank you for not folding. So here's the question now. What are you going to negotiate next? Not what project, not what deal, but what part of your life have you been silent about, waiting for it to fix itself, when in fact, it's waiting for you to ask? Ask for peace, ask for clarity, ask for better alignment. Ask for the version of you who doesn't just know how to win, but knows how to choose what's worth winning. Because not every deal is worthy of you anymore. You've outgrown the need to be everywhere. You've outgrown the need to prove anything. You've outgrown the idea that negotiation is about getting more. Now you know it's about getting right. Right values, right energy, right direction. And that's how you lead not just in business, but in life. In the next section, we'll go even deeper into how this kind of negotiation creates ripple effects, not just for you, but for the teams, the systems, and the cultures you're part of. This is where your mastery turns outward and multiplies. When you master negotiation as a way of being, not just a tool, you begin to change more than your outcomes. You start influencing entire ecosystems. Because clarity is contagious. And confidence? It doesn't just stay with you. It radiates outward, giving others permission to do the same. This is where your personal negotiation power becomes cultural influence. Think about the spaces you operate in. Your workplace, your team, your industry, your community. How many people around you are still operating from fear? From silence? From a belief that their needs are secondary? That their voice must wait? That asking is too much? Now think about what happens when you walk into the room, not as the loudest, not as the smartest, but as the clearest. You model grounded communication. You ask calmly, hold boundaries gracefully, and reframe with empathy. And without even trying, you shift the energy. You make it safer for others to speak truth. You elevate the standard for fairness and respect. You reset what normal negotiation looks like, from tension and posturing to alignment and co-creation. This is real leadership, because you're not leading with control. You're leading with example. Tim Castle calls this ripple effect the invisible influence, the unseen force that reshapes how others behave, simply because they've witnessed what's possible. In your team, this means people start preparing more thoughtfully. Conversations become clearer, faster, more honest. There's less passive-aggressive tension and more direct ownership. Difficult conversations aren't avoided. They're invited. And why? Because you went first. You showed that clarity isn't confrontation, that boundaries aren't rejection, that negotiation isn't manipulation, it's collaboration with intention. In your client relationships, this means you stop over-delivering out of insecurity. You stop undercharging out of fear. You start co-authoring deals that last because they're built on mutual respect from day one. And when clients experience that, they don't just come back. They send others your way. Not because you had the cheapest offer, but because you offered the cleanest process, the most grounded communication, the rare energy of, this is going to be handled right. In your industry, this means your name begins to carry weight. You become the one others ask for insight. You shift norms. People start thinking, if they can negotiate like that, why not me? Your actions begin to challenge the entire culture of overwork, over-apology, over-compromise. You show that results don't require burnout, that impact doesn't require intensity, that deals don't require drama. In your family and community, this means children grow up seeing that calm strength is possible. Friends learn to hold their own needs without guilt. Partners learn to speak up without fear of rupture. And again, it's not because you preach, it's because you embody, quietly, consistently, powerfully. Let's go deeper. Cultural change happens when enough individuals decide to no longer tolerate the old script. You've now rewritten your script, from internal hesitation to internal leadership. And every time you show up aligned, you tear down old beliefs for others too. Because people are always watching. They're watching how you respond to pressure. They're watching whether you bend when you say, this matters to me. They're watching how you navigate disagreement. And when they see you remain clear, kind, and calm, they adjust. Their standards rise. That's the cultural shift. It doesn't require a stage, just a consistent standard. Lived out. One email, one meeting, one conversation at a time. So what does this look like in real time? A teammate says, I guess I'll just do it, even if it's not fair. And you say, let's pause. If it doesn't work for you, it's worth discussing. What would feel fair to both sides? That one intervention rewires the room. Or a client tries to scope creep after agreeing on terms. Instead of folding, you say, I want to keep this partnership strong, and I've found that honoring original agreements builds long-term trust. Let's revisit what was agreed and go from there. Again, not conflict. Clarity. That tone becomes your signature. You don't just get deals done, you change how deals are done. This is legacy work. Not just personal growth, but ecosystem expansion. You're no longer negotiating just for yourself. You're negotiating on behalf of others who haven't found their voice yet. And one day, they will, because you modeled it first. So as this ripple effect spreads, keep asking, where can I make this conversation more honest? Where can I shift pressure into presence? Where can I help others step into their worth? Not by telling them, but by showing them. Because now you know. Every negotiation you lead well is a gift to the people around you. It creates safety. It creates standards. It creates space. And in the next section, the final full-length piece, you'll gather all of this power and prepare to live it daily. Not in peaks, not just in high-stakes moments, but in the small, consistent habits that build a life of influence, alignment, and ease. Mastery isn't made in dramatic moments. It's made in the mundane, in the small decisions, the quiet boundaries, the moments when no one is watching and no one is grading you. That's where the real negotiation lives. That's where your transformation either becomes permanent or fades back into theory. Because now, it's not about knowing what to do. You know. You've internalized the frameworks, the mindset, the language. The next level isn't learning more. It's living it daily. That means showing up to each day like it's a table you've been invited to, and deciding what kind of deal you'll accept from yourself, your environment, your relationships, your work. You wake up, and instead of being dragged by your calendar, you ask, what will I negotiate for today? Space to think? Time to move your body? Energy for your own projects, not just someone else's? You check your inbox, and instead of replying out of guilt or obligation, you ask, does this require my yes? Or does it need a boundary, a question, a pause? You enter a meeting, and instead of nodding along, you ask yourself, is there something that needs to be said? Something I've been quiet about because it felt risky? This is the practice. This is what turns the skills into a lifestyle. You use your calendar as a negotiation tool, not just to manage time, but to honor focus. You use your inbox as a filter. Not everything deserves your urgency. You use your voice not just to close deals, but to protect your standards, your rest, your energy. Because negotiation isn't just about more, it's about better. And better often begins with what you remove, not what you add. You remove the apology from your ask. You remove the panic from your pause. You remove the guilt from saying, this doesn't work for me. You remove the lie that you have to overextend to prove your worth. And what you build in its place? Quiet clarity, sustainable confidence, peaceful power. This is the version of you that others feel before you say a word. The version that doesn't have to posture because your preparation speaks for you. The version that doesn't have to justify your rates, your time, your decisions, because your results already did. Let's not romanticize this. It's not always glamorous. Some days, living this work will feel heavy. You'll want to shrink again, to fold, to say yes when you mean no. You'll doubt yourself, question your instincts, feel the gravity of the old version of you pulling you back. That's okay. That's part of the negotiation too, because mastery is a conversation, not just with others, but with your habits, your identity, your future self. And every day, you have a chance to answer differently, to speak up one sentence sooner, to hold one pause longer, to ask one layer deeper, to walk away one moment wiser. You won't always get it perfect, but you will always get the chance to practice. And that's where transformation is sealed, in repetition. So make your practice simple and sustainable. Create rituals that reinforce your clarity. Journaling what went well in each conversation. Rehearsing key asks before big calls. Checking your internal posture before replying to pressure. Reflecting weekly. Where did I show up aligned? Where did I shrink? What will I do differently next time? These habits don't just make you better at negotiating. They make you better at living. Because negotiation, at its core, is not about getting what you want at all costs. It's about creating aligned outcomes, internally and externally, without losing who you are in the process. It's about deciding you're worth the effort, the space, the silence, the ask, the preparation, the no when needed, the yes when it's right. And if you've made it here, you already know you are. So take this work with you. Let it shape your voice. Let it guide your decisions. Let it steady your presence. Let it raise your standards. And when people ask how you became so confident, so calm, so clear, don't say it was magic. Don't say it was luck. Say, I learned how to negotiate with intention. First with others, then with myself. And I never stopped, because you haven't, and now you never will. This is not the end of a lesson. It's the beginning of a lifestyle. By now, you've walked through every phase, from awareness to execution, from fear to clarity, from scattered effort to strategic precision. You've stepped into rooms with your voice steady, your preparation deep, and your posture rooted in worth. You've learned how to negotiate, not to dominate, but to align, not to win over, but to win with. And most importantly, you've started negotiating with the person who matters most, yourself, because that's where every transformation begins, and where every breakthrough must return. This journey has given you tools, but it's given you something deeper. Identity shift. You no longer see negotiation as an event. You see it as a lens, a rhythm, a frame for how you approach conversations, decisions, opportunities, and challenges. You've built the courage to ask, the stillness to wait, the clarity to prepare, the calm to respond, the discernment to walk away, and the strength to hold your standard. This is what it means to live with deliberate authority, not over others, but over yourself. It doesn't mean you'll never be afraid again. It means fear no longer runs the show. It doesn't mean you'll always get the outcome you want. It means you'll always know you showed up in a way that honored who you are and what you value. And that's everything, because this version of you, the one who walks into rooms aware, anchored, and ready, this is the one who doesn't wait for things to happen. This is the one who makes them happen from a place of deep integrity. You've learned how to shape environments, not just navigate them. You've learned how to protect your time, your energy, your mission, not just perform inside someone else's script. You've learned how to say no so that your yes carries weight. You've learned how to build bridges, not just close deals. You've learned how to be generous without being depleted and firm without being feared. That is true influence. And now, your only job is to stay in the practice, because the world needs people like you. Clear, calm, fair, bold. People who can lead through conversation. People who can heal broken systems through presence. People who can model what power looks like when it's anchored in empathy and delivered with intention. Let that be your legacy. Not just a great negotiator, but a great human who knows their worth, speaks it with grace, and creates outcomes that elevate everyone involved. So take this voice with you. Let it echo through your conversations. Let it guide your asks. Let it remind you, in the moments you're tempted to shrink, that you've already become someone who no longer negotiates from need, but from clarity. And when you need to return to the basics, do it. Not from doubt, but from devotion. Because mastery isn't about never returning. It's about loving the return, over and over again. This is the art. This is the practice. This is you, the master of your mind, the keeper of your voice, the architect of your outcomes. You negotiate, you lead, you align, and you rise.